The Royal Air Force is the youngest of the three services of the Crown. On joining the service, the young airman is taught the first principles of discipline common to all the services. When you consider that these young recruits have only been on the square from 5 to 6 weeks, you will appreciate that only a mentally and physically alert type of personnel is chosen for the service. The recruit commences his 3 years' training in the workshops, where he will become a skilled engineer capable of maintaining both aircraft and their engines. A competitive spirit is encouraged, and at the end of his training, a recruit is fit to take his place as a qualified mechanic in any unit to which he may be posted. In the school, under civilian instructors, he receives tuition in numerous subjects to fit him mentally for his career. The higher command takes an interest in the progress of young aircraftsmen and possible pilots of the future. Any cadets showing special ability are encouraged to study for a commission, or alternatively, on becoming leading aircraftsmen, may be selected for a course of training as airman pilots with the rank of sergeant. This is the annual passing out ceremony. For the flight cadets or future officers at Cranwell, a special education of a very high order lasting 2 years is necessary if they are to become permanent pilot officers. When one realizes that out of 118 candidates of proven ability and character, only 60 are admitted to the Royal Air Force College, it is evident that the examinations are of no mean standard. Between intervals of study, instruction in flying forms an essential of the cadets' training. Here is a party of cadets about to make their first flight. They will probably only be taken up as passengers, and this is possibly the only flight they will make at the Cadet College, which does not involve a definite personal responsibility. Instrument flying, what is popularly known as blind flying, requires special experience. Having learned to fly, this is the next stage in the cadets' training. The blind flying instructional aircraft is fitted with a hood which can be drawn over the pupil's cockpit. He is thus compelled to fly solely by the use of his instruments as he would do in clouds or at night. Meanwhile, the instructor has a clear view and can correct any faults by telephone. The instructor now gives a few additional hints. Skill in instrument flying is essential to the night bomber pilot. A young officer might normally be posted to any squadron such as this on completing his flying training. These huge machines carry a crew of 5 in addition to a heavy load of bombs, 2 specially trained pilots being required to take turns at the controls. These aircraft can fly in formation in spite of their unwieldy size, and what they lose in speed they make up in armament, as their machine guns mounted fore and aft offer a formidable opposition to any faster plane and are capable of firing at the most unexpected angles to the aggressor. So much of the work of the Royal Air Force demands specialist knowledge that apart from their training for general duties, officers are encouraged to specialize in any of the technical aspects of the air, such as wireless, engineering, navigation, or photography. This is a scale model aeroplane in a wind tunnel during a demonstration of the forces acting on the various controls of an aircraft in flight. The more practical side of the making and upkeep of airframes is going on in the same shop. Advanced electrical science is explained by experts in the physics laboratory, with the theory of aircraft engines to follow. A practical course of welding and moulding gives the finishing touch to a sound engineering training. To the lay mind, the parachute offers only a novel form of life-saving. To the service, however, a knowledge of the parachute is a necessity, and a compulsory course of instruction is therefore taken by certain officers and airmen. Thus all ranks have a means of escape from aircraft in an emergency. Parachutes are worn by all members of the crews in service aircraft. The canopy, which is made of silk and has a diameter of 24 feet, is attached by 24 cords to the harness couplings. All this has to be compressed in the careful manner shown into a small pack. A life may depend on the care with which this packing is done. There must be no hitch in the unfolding of the parachute. Upon pulling the ripcord, a small auxiliary parachute appears. This, filling with air, helps to draw forth the larger canopy, which rapidly unfolds and in turn fills with air, thus reducing the rate of descent of the parachutist. Before pupils attempt a parachute descent, dummies representing their exact weight are released from various types of aircraft. Thus, when the time comes for a pupil's first parachute descent, he has been given added confidence. However, unless a pupil volunteers to make a parachute descent, he is not obliged to do so. In a parachute landing, the force of impact with the ground is equal to a jump from a 10-foot wall. These experts have offered themselves for a demonstration. It will be noticed that for experimental purposes, the parachutist carries 2 parachutes, the second of which can be used in emergency. This is the first stage in the art of parachuting, what is termed a pull-off drop. The instructor, standing on the wing, here awaits a signal from his observer, which informs him that he is approaching the landing ground. He then turns about and at the correct moment pulls his ripcord. After this, he has no more to say in the matter and is pulled off backwards into space. organized sports form an essential part of the training necessary for physical fitness. A torpedo aircraft can direct a torpedo with very great accuracy, and if necessary, from close range. The torpedo seen here weighs nearly half a ton, and being naturally streamlined in shape, reduces the aircraft's speed by only a small amount. The release mechanism and the apparatus itself are so perfectly balanced that, as you see, the torpedo meets the water at the correct angle and thereafter continues its journey submerged. As an introduction to landing on the deck of an aircraft carrier, a pilot is first taught to alight in a marked space on an ordinary land aerodrome. Having become proficient, he is then allowed to make an actual deck landing. An aircraft carrier can house 50 or 60 aircraft within the hull, a series of lifts enabling them to be rapidly transferred to and from the landing deck. These aircraft provide for reconnaissance, bombing, torpedo carrying and fighting purposes. flying boat is capable of taking off and landing on water and is entirely independent of the aircraft carrier. With a flying endurance of 8 hours or more in the air, it can patrol vast stretches of sea and coastal routes, and among other things can carry out detective work on enemy submarines. The flying boat, which at first sight looks large and unwieldy, is a flying fort and carries a varied assortment of armed equipment, including heavy bombs. Although cumbersome, flying boats are quite maneuverable and can adopt a close defensive formation. The fighting aircraft visible in the distance appear to be giving them a very wide berth. Every regular officer is expected to spend part of his time serving overseas, as a rule for a period of about 5 years, which may be extended if necessary for another 5 years. Since the aeroplane is able to penetrate little-known parts of the world that would be inaccessible to other forms of transport, it is no wonder that the R.A.F. is more and more being used as the first weapon in a dispute. In the arid wastes of the desert, most planes can carry a supply of bombs, and every pilot is trained to drop them accurately, or their use would become negligible. Bombing aircraft are essential to the police duties of the Air Force in the desert, and training in the art of accurate bombing is part of the work of every pilot. Our army can now be transported by troop carrier to any given point that may require urgent assistance. Again, by the same means, they can be watered and forage can be supplied for the horses and camels. Most water found in the desert is only good enough for the beasts. For the troops, the water has to be treated at the base and transported by troop-carrying planes to distant outposts. When supplying advanced forces with food, special containers attached to parachutes are dropped with their rations. One can imagine the relief of any beleaguered garrison on the appearance of a supply like this. In actual warfare, wells have been known to be poisoned. The army today takes no risks. These monster planes can load up with 30 or 40 hundredweight of water apiece. As spotters of the enemy's movements, they're in their element. Tribes can no longer attempt raids and get away with it. In this case, the one above sees all. Military history would have to be rewritten had aeroplanes come into existence earlier. For instance, the tragedy of General Gordon at Khartoum would not have taken place. There would have been no anxiety as to his relief, for the menacing hordes of dervishes that surrounded him would today have soon be dispersed. Instead, we have with us only the memory of a very gallant general. However skillful a pilot may be, it can justly be said that he has never finished learning to fly. Here we see members of an interceptor squadron working out a new maneuver with the aid of models. These aircraft are capable of climbing to a height of 30,000 feet, something over 5 miles, in an incredibly short space of time. Their exceptional speed has been achieved without limiting quick maneuverability and sensitive control. Let us assume that hostile aircraft have been signaled approaching this country. A code with numbers indicating their direction and height of patrol is signaled to the squadron, who are lined up on the alert with engines running. In the deployment of 9 machines for formation drill, every pilot is in direct communication with the leader, whose position is at the center, and can follow his signals so that the response of the whole squadron becomes the movement of a unit. These aerobatics fall quite outside the class of what is known as stunt flying. They are just part of a training which demands the ultimate skill of every pilot concerned. And if they are good to look at, it is merely because they're a demonstration of good flying.